Welcome back to the channel, y'all. MrNightmare here back again, and today we're going to listen to some scary stories brought to you by Mr.Nightmare. Let's do it. Okay, let's do this. Mr.Nightmare. Always looking forward to it. Let's go. Chat rooms. When's the last time I've been in a chat room? In terms of...
Back around 2010 and 2011, when websites like Chat Roulette were popular, my friends and I would sometimes mess around with people on our webcam. The website usually peaked on weekend nights, and when we were like 14, we didn't really do much on weekend nights. So I had my friend Peter over, and we hopped on Chat Roulette. It was just my mom home, so we went upstairs with the laptop where we could be as loud as we wanted. We acted like two idiotic 14-year-olds, basically being mean and rude to anyone we saw.
Why?
So basically on Chat Roulette, you'd press go and it would match you with someone else, anyone else using their webcam. Some girl who appeared to be a couple years older than us popped up. Her camera quality wasn't the best, and she was sitting in a dark room with a blue light filling a decent amount of it. I'm not going to get into the nitty-gritty tiny details over what Peter and I said to her, but we acted like douchey, mean teenage boys, to be frank. Then Peter said, "Who is that behind you?" I suddenly looked beyond the girl to see what he was talking about. I didn't see anyone, so I caught on that he was joking. She seemed to know he was messing with her right away too, saying something along the lines of us being little dweebs. Peter insisted to the girl he was being serious, and I played along with it. The girl turned around, and like the two of us, she didn't see anyone behind her. All I could see behind her was the rest of the room, which appeared to be a mess, and her bed tucked in the corner of the room. Peter said there was someone hiding behind her bed. I looked at Peter, trying to hold in the laughter and make it seem like I was seeing what he was seeing too. Then I finally noticed someone in the background, by the back wall of the girl's room. He was coming out from behind the bed,
That's from her, but I get where they're going with that.
My smile disappeared as I then realized Peter wasn't joking around. I started telling her that someone was actually sneaking up behind her. Realistically, I assumed it was her brother or something messing with her, trying to scare her. So I said that. I said, "It looks like your brother is trying to scare you." She finally turned around, and her reaction was not what I was expecting at all. She screamed at the top of her lungs and jumped back out from her chair onto the desk, crawling backwards while frantically kicking her feet at the person approaching her. We could hear the sounds of books and other items falling from her desk as she kicked and screamed. Her webcam started to shake, as all we could see of her was her legs. The person in her room got in arm's reach of her, and now we could see a black mask over his face. He grabbed the girl and kept screaming, "Shut up," and her screams only got worse. Peter and I were silent now, simply staring, not knowing what to make of this.
You better do something!
The man then looked into the webcam from behind his black mask for a second, and a few seconds later, the screen went dark, and we connected to another random person. Peter and I looked at each other. We closed out from the website and sat there to talk and take that in for a second. We agreed it was possible it could have been a prank. A lot of people on YouTube at the time played pranks on people on Chat Roulette to get some crazy reactions. But it looked real. Almost too real to be a performance. Well, a few days later, I got a text from Peter. It was a link. A link to a news article about a teenage girl who had been murdered while home alone a few days back. We told our parents because we wanted to be able to give a description of what happened to the police. So our parents coordinated a time for us to sit down with the two investigators to explain everything we saw. We said we were on Chat Roulette with a blonde girl who looked either 16 or 17, and that some average-sized looking man wearing a black ski mask emerged from a back corner of her room and started to attack her on camera, but only for so long until he turned off the computer. We gave the best description we could. Whether they believed us or not, or whether the information helped or not, was something we honestly never found out.
That's so messed up.
One winter night when I was 17, I came up with the brilliant idea of exploring the deep web after hearing all the craze about
stupid.
Everybody and their mother was claiming how the deep web was some dangerous, crazy
I
part of the
am never
internet
going
that
to the
nobody
deep
should
web.
ever
Hell
go
no.
to. Others said these people didn't know what they were talking about, and that the deep web is actually extremely boring and uninteresting. I wanted to do some browsing out of curiosity. I needed to download a special web browser called Tor, which allowed you to visit websites ending with the .onion domain. When I had the browser, I didn't know where or how to start, so I googled where to start on the deep web, and that gave me a page full of archived links to the deep web. The page scrolled down forever. There must have been thousands of links. I finally decided to click on one. It was a .onion link that led to another archive of links. It took a while to load, but there I was, on another page of probably thousands of links. Only the background to this page was now black, and the links were red. I scrolled down until I found a link to a chat room. This also took forever to load, but I think it was called Backdoor Fire Chat or something. I put in a quick username, ABC1234, and I was entered into the chat. There appeared to be only 3 people in the chat, but messages from hours, even days before, were still in the chat log. Most of the messages people left were links. Hardly anyone had been saying what the links led to, though. One of the other users, whose username was something ominous like username 157 or something, said something directed to me. He asked what I was looking for. I thought for a second, then typed out, "I'm looking for the darker part of the deep web." He didn't say anything for a minute. Then he posted a link. He didn't say what the link was to, so I asked.
Hey!
I waited another minute for him to
Calm
respond.
down with that
Instead,
noise!
He apparently signed out from the
Okay,
chat,
that's gonna
so
creep
that
me
it
out.
was just
Stop.
me and one other person. So I clicked on the link, and I swear it had to have taken at least 2 minutes for the page to finally load. It was an unlabeled website with a black background and a banner at top with a picture of a living room with a red satanic symbol
hell
on
no!
the table.
Turn it off!
All the text seemed to be written in some weird language. It seemed to be Hebrew characters. There were also a bunch of buttons, also written in whatever language this was at the top of the page. I clicked one of the middle buttons, and after a long loading time, a black chat room took over the screen. Messages with more of the Hebrew or whatever language filled the chat room. In one of the messages, though, 2 words stuck out that were written in text I could actually read. The words were my first and last name. I tried to exit the chat, but my mouse started to lag. Then the other user in the chat room posted a picture of my face. It was clearly taken just now.
You better get out of there!
Then he sent another and another. Constant pictures showing my horrified face basically frame by frame. I tried moving the mouse and clicking out of the browser, but it was frozen, and my computer just kept making the error noise as more messages I couldn't read were sent, as well as more pictures of my face. I pressed down the power button on the laptop for like 10 seconds, and it finally turned off.
You gotta be kidding me with
seemed
that!
to take longer than usual. My heart was still racing though, and I still had goosebumps. I left my computer off for 12 hours and put a post-it note over my webcam. You got to be joking with that! I also deleted Tor and never visited the dark web again.
You got to be joking with that! Are you serious? Alright, last story, right? This is the last one, right?
Remember that little feature on the original Nintendo DS called PictoChat? It was like a little chat room you could join with anyone else using a DS.
I don't know, because I never had a DS, so...
My house is right down the block from the town street in our neighborhood, what with all the pubs and festivities and such. When I was 12, the Nintendo DS was really in its prime, especially the Pokemon games. There was a spot in town down the block from me, tucked between a couple stores with a few benches that I'd walk to all the time to meet up with my friend Carl, so that we could battle in Pokemon usually. Actually, it was a spot where a lot of kids would be walking around with their DSs. One night, instead of playing Pokemon, Carl and I were just messing around on the PictoChat feature, sending each other inappropriate pictures and dumb messages, laughing our asses off. I remember taking note of how much the leaves were starting to sway nearby, how the wind was apparently starting to pick up. Then, we both got the ding that would sound when someone else would enter the chat. It also said on the screen, "Now entering Joe." Carl and I looked up at each other, smiling, because it was funny but weird that someone else had joined. We looked around our immediate surroundings, in that little square between buildings that we were sitting in, but it was a little dark to see anything outside of the light hanging from the side of one of the buildings, so we went along with it. I wrote "Hey Joe" with my stylus. He responded back with keyboard text saying "Hey." So Carl wrote with his stylus, "Where are you?" Joe sent back a message in more keyboard text, saying, "I see you." Carl and I looked up at each other once again, since it was obviously a strange thing for him to say. We looked around again. Joe sent another message saying, "You guys come here a lot, don't you?" I wrote back this time using the keyboard instead of free draw, saying, "Yeah, who are you and where are you?" Then, this Joe person sent a picture. It was some squiggly, fluffy-looking object. My first guess was that it was a cloud. I typed back, "Is that a cloud?" Joe said, "No, guess again." I typed back, "Why?" He typed back, "It's where I'm hiding." For the third time, Carl and I exchanged glances. Carl screamed out finally, "Who's out there?" I looked back down at the DS and saw another picture from Joe. It was similar to his last picture, but more detailed. I sent my second guess. "Is it a bush?" I said. Then I heard a chuckle. It sounded like right on top of me. I knew Carl heard it too, because we once again looked at one another. But then, I saw his eyes focus on something behind me. I turned and saw some guy slowly standing up from a big bush that sat behind my bench.
Get out of there!
He towered over me, and as he looked down at me, he had on a very wide smile. I remember his teeth were small and his gums took
This
up
guy's
most
a
of his
pedophile.
smile. Then he put both his hands
What?
on my shoulders, not in a gentle way. He grabbed my shoulders and squeezed them with a tight grip. And I screamed.
Why y'all let him get that close?
Carl and I ran for our bikes, and as I initially started to pedal, desperately trying to pick up speed, I heard the clonking of the man's footsteps behind us. Thankfully, we picked up enough speed and got back into public view on the road, and only then did I look back. The man wasn't following us. We went straight to my house and told my mom and dad, who forbid me from going to town alone at night anymore. They called Carl's parents to recommend they do the same to their son. Even if they hadn't put that restriction on me, there's no way I would have ever gone back to that spot at night. It actually freaks me out to wonder how many times that guy had to have watched us on our DS's to have known when to come, and with one of his own.
Okay. All right. Hold on. Okay. First of all, that last story. Why y'all letting? Okay, yeah, I understand. But the moment you saw some giant man coming out of a bush, you get the hell out of there. You don't stand. You gonna stand there and just what? Let him get close to you? You never let anybody get in arm's length of you. You move your butt out of there. What's wrong with you? Okay, that's scary enough, and exactly what he said, what the narrator is talking about. Yeah, it's scary to think how many times we were there and this dude was watching us. He sounded like a stereotypical pedophile. You know, like the "Hey little boy, want some candy?" You know, some like stuff like that. Okay, the the one that I would say the one that creeps me out the most is probably the first story. Even though they were taking stuff from those images came from Paranormal Activity, but just that alone of you're in a chat room, you're by yourself, you're talking with somebody else, and you can see somebody else behind them, and you're like, "Who's that behind you?" You turn around, it's not there. Like, could you imagine that? That stuff's a house invasion, and you're all alone, and then they knew. Come on, man. Come on, man. Where does Mr. Nightmare get these stories from? Where does he get these stories from? That alone, and it's not even he's narrating, but it's you could just picture it in your head. I've reacted to many of his stories over the time, and they're scary as they get legitimately scary. They get scary just because then my mind starts going into that place like, okay, that's scary. That's legitimately scary. Well, guys, look, with that being said, I'm gonna go do something to take my head out of this because that's creepy. That's uh-uh. Okay, we done. We done. Y'all take care. All right? Just take care.